Thank you so much, Antoine, for having me here. I hope you can see my screen as well. Yeah, so as you said correctly, in my day job, I'm a chief product officer at Grab, and at night I'm passionately trying to learn and code on like LLMs these days to stay updated what's happening. So I'm really passionate to have a chance to talk to all of you about artificial intelligence and share like some examples of how they're transforming our business operations day to day. So let me start quickly to give you a quick introduction. So for those of you who've been to Southeast Asia, I hope you've been a happy customer of Grab and our services. And if you've not been a happy customer, you know now who you can reach to help you fix your problems in the future. So we are always very keen to learn. But for those of us who are still getting to know us, we are Southeast Asia's leading super app, providing services such as ride-hailing, financial services, food delivery. So all those things in the roof under one app. So like a very extensive experience. And to give you a sense on the scale of our company, so we started in 2012 in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. We're now covering 8 countries across the region, more than 700 cities. And more impressively, more than 1 in 20 people in Southeast Asia use Grab every month to either eat, ride, pay, or use some of our other services like grocery deliveries. To give you a sense, like in a super app, the breadth of the services that we have, in Malaysia, we own a very nice grocery chain called Jaya Grocers that delivers like fresh produce to Malaysian households, so allows you to shop in the stores. We have things as like food delivery in Singapore, delivering like really nice Michelin star meals and many other things. We have all kinds of street foods in Bangkok, digital payments. We operate 3 full service banks across Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So hopefully you get like a sense of the breadth of the services that we offer. But more precisely, when we say super app, actually, what we're talking about is 3 super apps. The one that some of you might be familiar with, our consumer super app that you and me and millions of others can use. Our driver super app, where several million driver partners who earn an income on our platform use every day to complete their jobs. And our merchant super app, that basically all of our food partners and merchants can use to provide like delicious meals and daily necessities in the case of GrabMart. And so hopefully you now have like a sense of the scale and the type of marketplaces that we operate. And I'll give you a glimpse of why AI is such an important investment for us. As a company, we're extremely data driven, and we rely on data both for decision making, but also improving the quality of our marketplace operations. So when we started, we used to operate many parts of our marketplace manually. But as we grew and became more sophisticated across many services, obviously these manual adjustments for things like pricing levels, right? Like how do you price a trip? How do you price a food delivery? What incentives do we pay our drivers to stay online? That was done in the early days of Grab completely manual. But that is now like millions of decisions every day. So that became completely unscalable. So that's why since several years, we have invested heavily in AI and machine learning techniques from the very early days of us as a company. So let me give you a quick view of where AI is everywhere at Grab. Right? Like, so you can see it's basically throughout the entire experience, it's powered by AI. And we have right now over 1,000 different AI and machine learning models in production, which we believe is one of the highest deployments of artificial intelligence in the region. And it touches basically every single part of our product. Well, like as you can see in the screen here, it goes from marketplace management. It is heavily indexing on safety, right? Like all of our rides are completely monitored by AI to keep both the passenger and the driver safe. Personalization, right? Like that food recommendations are a very personal thing, right? Like, are you vegetarian? Do you prefer halal? What kind of cuisine? Do you like spicy or not? Right? Like, so all of those are throughout the entire experience powered by AI. And let me double click on a specific example on something that many of you probably think is quite benign, is like booking a ride, right? Like, which sounds fairly simple. But if you do that like tens of millions of time every month, then obviously it becomes very, very complicated, right? Like, so it's not like the taxi dispatch system of the good old days when you just radio call drivers and then some driver like accepts. So for us, for every single ride booking, there's hundreds of micro decisions that are made and decision engines that are involved with that. So it starts from driver availability, estimating time, and then hence like setting prices, making payment authorization, fraud checks. All of those decisions need to be made in like hundreds of milliseconds before we even assign a driver. But then, like, I mean, the basic question is obviously, why don't we just assign the closest driver, right? Like, why is this algorithm so complicated? I mean, like using like machine learning just to make it more fancy. But the reasons for that are manifold, right? Like, for example, the closest driver to you may be about to wrap up his day, and his destination for his home is the other way, and he'll likely going to cancel on you, which means as a consumer, you would not have a great experience. So our machine learning algorithm detects that and allocates your driver that most likely won't cancel on you. Or we take things into account as driver and passenger profiles. So safety is at the very core of our platform. So whenever we can, we try to match female passengers with female drivers, because we've seen that that has a much lower cancellation rate, has a stronger feeling of safety on both sides. So things like that, all of those are taken into account and predicted. So if there's any other nerds in here, so basically what we use is like, this is like classical machine learning. So this is like an XGBoost algorithm that basically is powering all of this at scale and across like millions of allocations decisions every day. So that's just like one of the many things where you can see like an experience like this has probably tens of different AI models, from ETA prediction, driver predictions, fraud predictions, and so on. So you can see this is like classical machine learning is throughout everything. And in general, the way that we talk about these AI systems at Grab is we call them auto-adaptive systems. And in simple terms, an auto-adaptive system means the system learns. So that means we have like the data out of historical decisions, and we have real-time data of anything that's happening. Our systems then make a prediction. For example, an ETA prediction, how long do you take from getting from A to B? So it makes a prediction, then it takes an action. In this example of an ETA, it maybe sets a price for this ride, but then it also monitors the outcome. It says like, okay, I predicted this route as 17 minutes. Did the driver really take 17 minutes or maybe 15 minutes? And then it feeds the data and this learning back into the original data loop. The model retrains and then makes a better decision. And if that happens millions of times at every day, your systems become smarter and what we call basically auto-adaptive. And that's basically where we drive our marketplace with many of these auto-adaptive systems. But let me give you another example. On this slide, you can see a heavily congested road with many Grab drivers in this example in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And if you've been to this region, you know this is a very typical scene. In many of the cities where we operate, 70, 80% of all transport is done on motorcycles. And many of our cities are notorious for traffic jams, narrow streets, and back alleys, and super important shortcuts. So basically, motorcycles and scooters, they find ways to get around these very complex neighborhoods in miraculous ways, basically, not necessarily always following traffic rules. And what we've seen is like map providers did not offer such details. They were very Western centric, where like cars and like regular traffic rules are the norm. But for us, really, we need to deliver food, what we call from kitchen to couch, right? Like we pick it up in a restaurant and need to deliver it not quite to your couch, but at least to your like front door. And like all these like side roads, they don't have street numbers, they don't have street names, they don't have house numbers, they're not on any typical area. So basically the region was, as we called, under-mapped. And that was a problem that we've solved with the help of AI. And this problem required us to think really outside of the box, given that we couldn't get this data from any provider out there. So in typical Grab fashion, we went out and started building our own maps, which we now call Grab Maps. And what we did is we built our own dedicated AI-powered cameras. You can see like an early version of that I was like trying. I mean, in Grab, we really believe that we're all on the ground constantly. So there's like a picture of me trying one of our early AI cameras that looked like a GoPro that you can like put on a driver's helmet, and that has a powerful like 2 teraops. The early version had like a 2 teraops AI chip in there. So it basically films the streets and in real time can like map and make detections out of that. So basically, we use the power of like IoT, like a device deployed with our drivers and combined with AI, both on the device and in the backend, to automatically map and build this mapping data that before was just not available, right? Like, and these cameras, you can see they're small. They can go in every side alley. They can go inside like some of these super malls to like detect some of those things. And this has helped our drivers to navigate safely and efficiently instead of wasting time and getting lost. And we are a very socially minded company. What we're very proud of, it helps our drivers to earn a little extra income because we pay them for this data collection. So there's been a win-win-win. It has been great for our consumers that they get more predictable deliveries and rides. It's been great for our drivers, also like better experience finding customers, but also earning a little bit more. And it's been great for us to enhance the efficiency of our network. The second problem in our network that I'll share is supply positioning. Where are our drivers? Right? Like our mission is to allow our drivers to earn a sustainable income and make a living. And that's actually quite hard, right? Like as a driver, to know where you want to be at the right place at the right time is not a trivial problem. And I can say like, okay, I know like the business district is like at like lunchtime. It's maybe not the best place. Maybe it's better like after work or like things like that. But it's still very hard to do that. So what we used AI to predict what we call network value, which basically is a prediction of how likely are you going to get a job in an area and how much are you going to earn for these jobs. And then basically gives you a recommendation as a driver. Should you stay where you are if there's a good chance to get a job, or should you maybe reposition yourself somewhere else where you can have a higher expectation of an earning? So we basically use AI to make that prediction and then surface this for the driver in Ride Guide to give them guidance to the right place. And that's, as you can imagine, all powered by AI. So that was like to give you a sense of some of the classical things we've been doing for quite a while. But obviously, the world of AI has been been shaken up quite a bit recently, and that's where I like talk some of the more like advanced things that are just happening, right? Like, so I think like I'm like every day I'm waking up and checking the AI news, and like every other day something new gets released. Right? Like OpenAI unveiled Sora for text to video models, which are now disrupting a whole industry. Mistral has released like completely open source models that are basically very close to GPT-4 level. Google has released with Gemini 1.5 Pro like a model with a 1 million token context window, which is basically means you can feed like I think 4 or 5 Harry Potter books in and like ask it questions at the same time. So just like with this is really where we're really excited. And for this next generation use cases, we basically classify them in 3 archetypes. So the first one is we call like the Swiss Army knife, where basically the model is a general reasoning engine. So the model performs many functions like translation, sentiment analysis, or categorization that in the past has been done by a specialized model. And the crazy thing which we're seeing is that basically in the past it would take us weeks or months and many people to develop a customized model. And now somebody just prompt engineers it and can build it in a few hours. So this has really allowed us to scale and democratize AI inside of Grab for people to use. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The second category is internal productivity. We firmly believe that, like Steve Jobs said, like back in the day, a computer is a bicycle for the mind. I think if like a computer is a bicycle, AI probably is like a super jet or something like that in comparison. So it really is available to all of our team members to enhance their productivity and make them like smarter and make better decisions. And the third thing is transformative consumer experiences. So where we really expose the AI to consumers to have a different interaction with our app that doesn't follow the patterns that they used to do. So let me dive in a little bit and share some of those things with you. So if you've been in Southeast Asia, you might have experienced some of our Swiss Army knife use cases. So in Thailand, Vietnam, you can now seamlessly browse and order local food, right? Like, and if you're like me, I mean, I don't understand any Thai, and if you've seen like Thai, it's like you cannot read anything, right? Like I can't even read the letters. So in the past, when I go to Thailand and look at a restaurant, then I would not understand anything. But now with LLMs, we can translate that menu completely to many languages, not only English, but also like Mandarin and other languages. So it's truly like democratizing force, breaking down barriers. The same as in Grab chat. When you're talking to a Grab driver, they will in many cases not speak English, but in the Grab chat, you can just type in your language, and our in-house model translates this in real time. And it's 3 times better than any leading translation provider and 50% cheaper. So we've made it possible to experience the rich culture of Southeast Asia without language barriers and through the power of like LLMs and these Swiss Army knife use cases. And for me at Grab, right, like the other thing that I'm really excited about is these on the ground immersions, right? Like, so tomorrow I go visit some merchants in Singapore. On Saturday, I'm flying to Indonesia, to Manado, and will like deliver food where people are always, you can see images there. People are always very surprised when like some of us show up and deliver food. So we spend like thousands of hours on the ground to collect feedback. So the next example I'm going to share is coming out of one of those immersions where one of my team members was talking with some of the merchant partners and some of their problems. So one of the big problems that our merchants have is updating their menu. And because they have so many different food items, and a lot of our merchants are not super digitally savvy. So for them, it's been always a pain to get their menu items present on the Grab app with good descriptions, the right prices, and all of those items. And to give you a sense of the order of magnitude, we get about 50,000 new merchants every month, right? Like, so it's a problem really at a significant scale. So we can just like have like humans digitalize all these menus. And that led to an idea during one of our hackathons. As you can see in my background, we run like regular like AI hackathons. So basically what the Grabber said is like, hey, now there's like this large vision language models, and they use a mix of like OCR and LLMs to onboard these menus. So instead of having to like type in everything from the phone or things like that, because many of our merchants wouldn't have a computer, so they just like need to snap a picture of their physical menus. The language model in the background does like text detection, entity recognition, and automatically creates the menu. And then the merchant just looks through that and makes like wherever necessary corrections. But the merchant can have, instead of like spending a couple of hours of typing that in, can now have a ready-made menu in minutes, right? Like, so, and that's like, again, right? Like in the past, we would have probably spent like months developing like a specialized model. In this case, we just use an off-the-shelf computer vision model and could develop this in like a 48-hour hackathon, and shipping that to production. Another example in the Swiss Army knife use case is content moderation, right? Like we have millions of chat messages between our passengers and drivers every day. And it's extremely important for us to keep everybody safe and make sure that these messages are respectful in both ways. So that is another great use case where we have an in-house model that basically detects any keywords like profanity, harassment, any of these things we don't want. And then any cases that are flagged get fed through a large language model, where they get verified. And then if they detect something, then it gets human cross-checked. But basically the first layer of checking is like completely automated, and has helped to detect tens of thousands of cases and make sure that we keep our platform safe. And we're doing the same thing now, both across text messages as well as images. Now, let me touch a little bit on internal productivity and co-pilots. So obviously we have things like coding productivity tools like for our developers, they have obviously support to write code, review code, doing all of that. But we've embraced that like much, much broader. So we talk about internal productivity. We are also talking about all of our grabbers. So the first thing that we have is we have basically a safe instance of GPT-4 that is available to all of our grabbers that they can use in their day-to-day work. But then we have also specialized tools for various of our teams that can benefit from that. an example you see in the screen is a really cool tool that is there for marketing content generation. So we call this Mystique, and it basically is an LLM that has been trained to speak in grab voice, which we say is like a playful with a purpose. And it helps us to generate messages, for example, we can use in a push message to a user. And this has been truly transformative, right? Like, so to give you a sense, in early pilots, the time for copywriting went down from 99 hours to 90 minutes. Right? Like that's a 99% reduction in time we need to create this. So basically there's just a human verification step at the end, but all the rest of like generating those messages got automated. But the thing that's honestly stunned me even more is not that it's like cheaper and faster, but it has generated text that has a 14% higher click-through rate in the campaigns that we've run. Right? Like, so it's much faster, but it's also a lot better. And like, honestly, like looking at some of the messages, they're really like high impact, high quality messages. And last but not least, let me share you a few examples of transforming our consumer experience by integrating LLMs into our products. So one great example is understanding what the user really wants, right? Like I'm sure many of you have used like food ordering experience either in Southeast Asia or outside, and it typically is like a keyword experience, right? Like you like put like 2 or 3 keywords in, but you can't really communicate what you really want, right? Like so in this screenshot, what you see is a example of what we say is a natural language query, right? Like so you say in this case, I want to have a post-workout high protein meal. And then it says like, okay, if you want to have that, you might want to have chicken breast, tofu salad, or maybe a protein shake. And then it searches for those. And you can like basically get results based on a conversation instead of having results based on keywords, right? Like, so that's one of the things that you're here getting an early preview, which we're just like rolling out in pilots across the region. Another example that we've rolled out to our drivers is the power of voice. Right now, these traditionally, most of our interfaces are powered by like taps and clicks and like entering some text. But especially for our drivers, it's obviously important to keep them safe while they're driving. So they can report things like incidents on the road while they're driving. And we made this possible by, instead of like tapping like 5 times on the menu and like giving like feedback, they can now just say something and say, oh, there's a road obstruction, there's a traffic jam ahead. And then will be automatically recorded, completely hands-free. And we've seen this has increased our reported incidents by 3x. So it has led to like a much, much more seamless experience. And the other thing which we're seeing also is improving accessibility for our users, right? Like we have a variety of users that are visually impaired, elderly, that sometimes are struggling to use our app. So we see now that with LLMs that really understand users and that people can talk to, we see this as a tremendous opportunity to improve accessibility for all, and giving them access to our app in a more conversational interface, similar to what I shared with you earlier in the food ordering experience. So we're still very early in that journey, but I hope this gives you like a sense both on the traditional machine learning and AI use cases, as well as the future things that are coming. And with that, I really want to like thank all of you, and I'm looking forward to a fun dialogue. And yeah, hand over back to you, Antone, for questions.
Thank you so much, Philip. There is one question that came through the chat, so I'm going to read that out. In the meantime, if folks prefer to ask their questions directly to Philip, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so. But the first question that came through the chat is from Paula. She asks, in what way are marketing messages generated by a learning language model-powered marketing content generator higher quality, and why do you think click-through rates are going up?
Yeah, this is a great question. I would say the experience that we have is one thing that LLMs can do is they can absorb an insane amount of information. So the reason how we built basically Mystique is obviously give it examples of our highest performing historical messages. Right? Like when I talked to you earlier about like the auto adaptive systems, obviously every message Grab has sent in the past, we logged like, okay, what was the response to that? How did people like it? And those messages are at really high volume, right? Like, so no human being can possibly like study all of the past high performing messages. But an LLM can, right? Like an LLM can get like a big context window. And then LLMs are really good at imitating the style of high performing messages, right? Like, so I think that is like why we see that LLMs are just so able to grasp what resonates with users and create messages that are so high quality. So when I read them, right, like if I like manually compare them, then I would, in most cases, definitely choose the one that's generated by an LLM. So I was very surprised by that in a very positive way. Hopefully that answers your question.
Excellent, thank you. And Simriti asks, as a PM myself, curious to hear how the product team at Grab uses AI to improve internal productivity.
Great question. And just plugging in here, Smriti, we're always hiring, so we're always eager to have more good PMs on our team. But apart from that, back to your question, basically is, so our PMs have a bunch of things where they use AI for internal productivity. So one thing obviously is, as I said, right, like they use LLMs to do things like write user stories, but also to process input from users, right? Like, so we do tons of user surveys, and a lot of the data that comes back back in non-English languages, like in Bahasa, in Indonesia, in Thai, Vietnamese, and so on and so on. So now PMs can access all of this information. Like they can really talk to like our NPS service. They can go in there and say like, okay, this was a message in Bahasa. What did this user say? What was the top 10 problems? Or PM can say, I'm the PM working on driver productivity. What are the problems there? So we have a knowledge base that all the drivers can all our product managers can access, that gives you like information that in the past was like impossible without like immersing yourself and doing all of this stuff. Now you can like talk to all of our surveys and get data, which is in many cases making them more productive. So those are some of the things that we see where PMs are doing that. And then we have like more benign things, right? Like all of our Zoom meetings in general are recorded, are automatically transcribed, being put on a wiki. So you can just like, I always tell people like attend less meetings and just like basically like ask later like an LLM what was said in this meeting, and then you can like get up to speed, right? Like, so I'm like, for many meetings now, I'm not attending anymore. I'm just reading the transcript, which instead of like an hour might take me 5 or 10 minutes. So those are some of the examples.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question is from Eric, who claims to be an ex-Grabber. And he has a very interesting question. It reads, while we do see many open source large language models created in the past years, such as Llama 2 and Mistral, there are not many open source large language models designated for Southeast Asian languages. And his question, I guess, is, will Grab consider open sourcing a Southeast Asian large language model in the near future?
That's a great question, Eric. And I think the good news is there is actually some high performing models, right? Like, so there is Sea Lion, which is a really nice model that is done by a group in Singapore, which I can definitely recommend to look at. And there's a bunch of the existing open models are decent in different languages across Southeast Asia. So I think we actually use some of the existing open models and actually have pretty good experiences. We haven't so far trained our own complete like ground up models. So at this moment we use basically what's out there. But if at some point in time we run into barriers, we definitely would consider contributing to open efforts.
Awesome. Another question is from Ziki. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How has Grab changed its organizational structure or mechanisms since the adoption of AI or generative AI? And this is a two-part question. And perhaps should I read the two questions separately, or that would probably be better?
Sure. So in terms of in terms of organizational structure, so basically the way that we're organized in tech families. So tech family is like a domain, like let's say marketplace, maps, our mobility vertical. So that's our general structure. And each of these units has a data science team embedded in the team. So basically the way that we're structured is AI and machine learning teams are part of every single team. So we don't have like a AI team that sits very far from the individual teams, but they're basically part of the daily problem solving. So we're working in what we call like an empowered way, where basically product managers, designers, engineers, data scientists are all working in one group. And each of these groups has AI experts embedded in them. And that has helped us that basically like whatever we do has AI embedded in like the thinking from day one. So that's basically the org structure that has worked well for us.
So, and the second part of Ziggy's question is, to what extent do you anticipate large language models to contribute to the growth engine of Grab in terms of user-wise, a user experience, or I believe user numbers and revenue-wise?
I need to be very careful what I say, that I don't end up in jail as an executive officer of our company. But basically, I think as I said, right, like we're already like using AI at the core of many of the things we're doing. So it's already contributing to our existing business, right? Like so for us, it's really like core to whatever we do, and hence also part of our growth journey. And some of the stuff that we're building, I showed, right, like those user experiences and so on. I'm really just personally very passionate that we can really talk to computers, right? Like that's, I think if you ask me what I'm personally most excited about is this natural language interaction across our drivers in our app, our merchants in our app, and our consumers in the app. So that's what I think is like going to drive lots of exciting things.
Awesome. There's one more question through the chat, but I'm going to give Vansham, who raised their hand, to ask their question. So if you can please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good evening to all of you, wherever you are in the world. So my question is, I'm very fascinated by the world of product management. I just started the same role as my early career, and I understand that there is a new AI thing cropping up each week, each month. And I also heard that you have an AI expert in your teams. But as a product manager, how do I learn, keep up with the AI updates, learn them, and try to implement in the company? Because personally, I'm not an AI expert, and I don't have much like expertise in that. So how do I start about approaching it?
Yeah, great question, Vancham. I would say a few things. First of all, I think no matter if AI experts or not, it's important to use AI in your daily life to get a sense for what's possible, right? Like so, it starts with very simple things like getting a pro subscription on either like ChatGPT or Claude or any of the state of the art tools, and getting familiar every day to use it in your life, right? Like so, I think I use it for things like planning my trips and like just like seeing wherever I can use it. So I think this familiarity goes a long way to like see what is possible and see also what things are not possible yet, right? Like so, this is really the basic, right? Like just use it every day, and be curious and try a bunch of different things. So that's one. I think the second thing I would say, there's really excellent content in a bunch of newsletters, YouTube, that you can really learn about that from like all the experts that are sharing. So that's, I mean, what I commonly do. So I think across these two things, you're already ahead probably of like 95% of the people if you do that. If you read like a bunch of the latest news and are just really like an active practitioner in the field. I mean, what I do in my hobby time, I'm like now started like coding again, and I've not been coding in production for like 20 years almost. So I've been very rusty, but with the power of AI, I've kind of like tried like a bunch of things and learned a bunch of things. So I think that has also worked well for me, but it's probably not like for everybody. Hope that's useful.
Yeah, I would start doing that exercise for sure. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Philip. And I also want to actually very quickly plug a forthcoming course that we're going to be delivering, I believe, between early May to mid-July. I will be sharing or at least posting more information on our website. But I just want to plug that there's a forthcoming course specifically on AI product management for newcomers or people who do not have a lot of experience in that field. So stay tuned. There are a couple of more questions that came through the chat. The first one is, with AI being at the core business, which kind of roles at Grab have you been repurposing?
I think honestly, many roles we never had, right? Like we never had a dispatch or operator allocating our taxis and so on. So in general, like whenever we have in general at Grab, I would say we have a lot more interesting problems to solve than people that can solve them. So right, like if we enhance the productivity of our tech teams, then they can just tackle more problems. So I think that's generally the kind of growth mindset that we have. Yeah, and as I said, like I'm sure there's many roles that would have existed if we wouldn't have AI, but we could have not built our app in the first place. So I think many roles, again, are for us really like just like AI has enhanced our productivity, but we're still giving millions of drivers an opportunity to earn an income. So we're not like we don't live in a world where we think AI is going to replace everything. That's not like what I think is going to happen, at least in the near future.
Awesome. There are questions are coming through the chat, so Philip, please bear with us. In the meantime, I want to remind our audience members to please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions if you feel comfortable. But moving on to the next question, I think this question comes from Terrence. He is curious if Grab has plans to expand their businesses to other parts of the Asian Pacific region, for instance, Hong Kong, Japan, India, and if you think such an expansion would be hugely costly.
We're really focused on Southeast Asia, and our journey over the last few years was tapping into new services, right? Like so, what I shared earlier, we are just in the process of starting our digital banks across the region, which was something we didn't have a few years back. We a few years back acquired a supermarket/grocery chain, Jaya Grocers. So we think there's so much growth in Southeast Asia, and we're very passionate about the region that we're really focused on going deep and solving many more problems. So that's our current focus, where we're really like pushing hard onto.
Great. The next question is going back, and this question is coming from Victor, and they ask, going back to your organizational structure, do you have a shared centralized data strategy across all product groups, or do they each serve their own data strategy independently?
Yeah, great question, Victor. So basically, we have a centralized data and analytics group that's within my team. So we have a team that basically serves all of the different functions. And then we have on the engineering side also like a data engineering group that serves our platform needs, right? Like so the way that we do this is we have like basically a central data lake where all the data about our users and their interactions, no matter if like a user interacts with the transport app or the food app, gets put into, and that all the services can benefit, right? Like so we really believe in this holistic view about our users and drivers and merchants. So basically, we need to centralize the platform, but then what we decentralize, the teams can use it for different things, right? Like so basically, while we make sure that everybody puts their data back, so that basically, like if you make a food order to a certain address, then we want to also make sure that that address is available when you get a transport pickup and for prediction, right? Like, or when you make a payment at an Italian merchant, we probably want to prioritize your search results for Italian restaurants, right? Like, so that's kind of why we have a centralized data storage and central data strategy, but then allow the teams federated to access the data and gather insights out of that. So hopefully that's a useful mental model.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. This is a very interesting one. So I believe the question is, how have your employees reacted to AI replacing parts of their jobs, if that is accurate? And how did you, as one of the leaders of the company, sell them the idea?
Yeah, I'm hoping AI replaces more of my job, that I have more free time. But somehow there's always other things that are popping up. But basically, I think the way that we see this is that people need to understand this in a growth mindset, right? Like, so what we've seen is like teams that have been able to do a lot more. So let me give you a simple example, right? Like right now, we can't possibly like train all of our drivers personally, like every day, giving them coaching how they can do better. With AI, there's things that we suddenly can do, right? Like examples that I shared earlier that are not possible. And I think this is in general what our employees see. They see this like possibilities of serving our drivers and merchants in ways that we couldn't before, and our users. And like, so that's what people are passionate about, to see these new possibilities. And in general, it wasn't really about like basically our mental model is not say do the job that an existing employee can do and do it like 30% cheaper, but the mental model was like, can we do 100 times more of that, right? Like instead of giving a tool that is only available to some people, can we like expand the scope of that? And that has basically meant that actually the work for people hasn't gone down, but the impact of that work has been amplified. And that's, I think, the very important thing that has helped to get people excited about that.
Awesome, thank you. A few more questions, I think exactly 3. So next question is, what was your deployment strategy to ensure that the AI results had a positive impact on your business?
So as a company, we're heavily experimentation driven. So the way that we work is like everything that rolls out goes through an experiment, i.e. like what is like called like an A/B test, right? Like, so, and that is true for both AI features and non-AI features, right? Like, so my Grab app looks very different than the Grab app of anybody else, because at any moment, like we run like thousands of experiments every year that basically like test these little things. So the way that we do that, we develop something new, and like the team obviously has a hypothesis that drives a positive impact. Let's say we launched an AI model to predict your destination, then we assume you're more likely to complete your trip booking because it'll be faster for you, right? Like, so that might be a hypothesis. And then we say like, okay, user A gets this feature and user B doesn't get that. And obviously we don't do this with 2 users, but we do this with like 1 million users on each side, and then test and say like, has it improved? If it has improved, then we roll out the feature. If not, we don't roll it out and try to improve it after. So that's in general across everything, both with AI and without AI. Everything that we do runs through an experimentation platform that obviously is highly automated at the scale that we're doing, and that then makes a decision, should this roll out or not.
Awesome. Another very interesting question reads, what role does AI regulation play for Grab? And is this limiting, ensuring? What do you think?
So I think in general, AI and data regulations are obviously super important for us, right? Like we're tightly integrated in the different local societies that we play in, and we work very closely with governments. So obviously those things are very important for us, following like all the rules that are there. I think in general, right, like we're not Grab itself, we're not developing like frontier AI models, right? Like, so we're not like, I mean, we're not kind of in the business to develop like an AGI system like the AI companies themselves would be doing. So we are less involved into like the regulation for these frontier models. The things that for us are more important are things like data privacy, ensuring data safety, right? Like, so I think we're obviously dealing with very important data for our drivers, for our merchants, for our passengers, and those are things where we're very closely monitoring and have like put all the safeguards in place that the data is used carefully.
Excellent. Second to last question via the chat channel is, what metrics do you use for measuring AI performance and cost? And how do you report on the return on investment of your AI models and keep your AI costs in check?
Yeah, so Tim, you're absolutely right that the AI models are definitely yeah, require a lot of compute power, and obviously a good reason why Nvidia's stock price is where it is today, because everybody is paying a significant tax there. So definitely correct. But in general, what we've actually seen like very good ROI of the things that we've developed, because like, I mean, our marketplace, just like every small improvement has such a significant impact on our business, right? Like, so every 0.1% improvement is a major financial impact on our marketplace. In general, we've seen that play out very well. But the way that we monitor it basically is the tech families I talked about earlier. They each have their cloud budgets that they're monitoring towards, and they make sure that they keep within those budgets. And if they run new experiments, they treat the cost of running the AI model as part of like the impact analysis, right? Like, so what I said earlier, when we run an experiment, then we would at the end see, is it positive impact, right? Like, is it like the combined like cost of running that and the benefit of that, is that worth it? So that's basically how we would monitor that. But in generally, it has been extremely positive.
Awesome. The very last question that came through the chat, and there's one more from the audience. So this question reads, and it's a very interesting one. How do you compare Grab with other ride companies in the same region that are currently using AI? And also, how do you differentiate your product across the different countries within the same region that may be open to the use of AI when you push out products?
Great question, Bernard, and great to see you as well. So, I mean, obviously, I don't have the inside view for every other company. We believe in Southeast Asia, we have one of the largest deployments of AI models in our industry. So we're obviously quite bullish on that. And I think we have also one of the largest tech teams. So the investment is just quite significant in that. And what I would say is the important thing for us is, then that's maybe the differentiating thing beyond the technology and the number of models, is being a super app gives you holistic insights about a user, which makes the experience very seamless, right? Like, so some very simple things that, like, if I'm on a ride home and order food, then the food arrives at the right time, at the right place, right? Because the data lake and so knows where I'm going and predicts this correctly, right? Like, so I think the big differentiation for us is really that we have a holistic view and we can make prediction across all of that. So I think that's quite unique for us and what we can do and what is possible.
Awesome. Those are all the questions that came through this chat, but I know Vansham has had his hands raised for a very long time, so I'm going to give him the opportunity to ask his question.
Thank you again. Assuming that the Southeast Asian markets also correlate very well to Indian markets, so like high population and higher number of drivers available to do the deliveries and cheaper dark stores if there is any. So have you heard of Zepto? It became a $1 billion company within like less than a year because they promised to deliver within 10 minutes. And they're mostly into grocery, not food delivery. I understand that. But do you plan to use AI and such machine learning models to decrease your delivery times and compete in that 10 to 15 minutes delivery time competition?
So to the first part, do we use AI models to decrease our delivery times? Yes, absolutely. We again, across food deliveries, groceries. One example I can give is we have existing AI models that predict the preparation time of restaurants, and then we send the driver there at exactly the right time. right? Like, so we know, okay, right now the restaurant is a bit busy. They might not take like 10 minutes, but 20 minutes, right? So we send the driver a bit later, or vice versa. We send the driver earlier if we see the restaurant is not super busy. So that helps us keep like eaters, get them their food faster, because we ensure the drivers neither arrive too early, which is like obviously from a cost side of perspective problem, or it arrives too late, which means the food arrives later than it should be. So that's one of the many examples where we use AI to get food delivered faster. The second part, I've seen and like been very impressed on my last trip to Bangalore. There's like hyper fast food delivery, or sorry, like grocery delivery. We're right now not playing in this like super fast like delivery, so it's not something that currently we're actively pushing, because I think unit economics across different markets are very different. But I've seen, and I'm like, I mean, I'm a big fan and friends with like some of the Indian companies that have done and played in this space.
Because Zepto created pressure for Zomato and Swiggy to adapt to like faster deliveries, and they made it. And fair point. I understand that this unit metric is super important to get the cost right. Thank you for the great insight.
You're welcome, Machan.